Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Conversation, where we talk about Kansas policy and how it's impacting our farmers today. With me, I have four wonderful gentlemen joining us. Josh, we'll start with you. You're the furthest from the hot seat right now, so we'll start with you, do introductions and who you work for.
Yeah, good morning, Kayla. Great to be here. My name is Josh Rowe, serve as the CEO of Kansas Corn, and then also farm about 70 miles north of where we're sitting at here today.
Mr. Sean.
I'm Sean Gifford. I raise corn, soybeans, and two boys in southeast Kansas. And I've been planting Beck seeds since they've moved into Kansas.
Morning, Kayla. Caleb Little with the Kansas Soybean Commission and Kansas Soybean Association, CEO and administrator of the checkoff there. Our offices are in Topeka, so just up I-70 here, close by.
Hop, skip, and a jump.
That's right.
Mr. Chris.
I'm Chris Tanner. I serve as chairman of Kansas Wheat right now, and also secretary treasurer for the National Association of Wheat Growers. I farm in northwest Kansas, and I raise wheat, corn, sometimes soybeans, not very often, alfalfa, and run a beef cow operation.
So it sounds like we're going to have a really wide, diverse conversation today from you guys. So we'll start with the easiest one. Let's talk about pest, disease. It's a lot of hot topics right now. Josh, you and I have talked about mycotoxins, corn stunt. We talked a little bit about Wheat Streak the other day, Chris. What are you guys hearing, seeing? What are you guys also working with your farmers on for new tools, technology, policy? Talk with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I can kind of kick off on that. And I guess that's one of the bonuses or benefits of Kansas and our climatic variation that we have across the state is we can get about any disease at any part of the season, right? Through that, you get down in Sean's area where they go from wet to dry in about 10 days, through that, all the way out to where Chris is. You know, specifically, overall in a state with a little wetter conditions that we've been used to the last few years has really brought all of those diseases back to life through that. What Kansas Corn's had the opportunity to partner with Kansas State University and some other industry partners and started, it's the Kansas Corn Disease Network. And actually right here where we're sitting at now is one of our partnering locations to monitor disease. Last year, had a new disease. Just kind of keep adding to the list there, and that is corn stunt that's carried by a leafhopper, a little grasshopper through that. And so we've got sites all across the state tracking the presence of those leafhoppers, and unfortunately they've been popping up more places every week. Fortunately, haven't seen those signs of corn stunt. Where we're at now in the season, it's probably too late for corn stunt to have much of a yield impact until you get out west, more into Chris's area, some of that later planted corn. But just through that, the typical, the southern rust, all that, some of my own fields that, gosh, it was drought conditions that we planted into now. I was telling the guys I've applied fungicide twice on most of my corn acres, and we'll be soon looking at the soybean side as well there. And really also from that corn standpoint, and appreciate the partnership with Beck's here, just that continual push to make sure we have access to these important crop health products that can fight these diseases, because it seems like we're getting hit from all sides, from the media to DC through there on that. But really appreciate Beck's partnership, and I help them monitor for this.
I'd say from the soybean side, it's a similar story. So like most of the commodity organizations in the state, we wear two hats. So we have on the checkoff side, it's really that proactive, forward-looking, doing the research to try to be preventative and to make sure farmers have the best data, the best genetics, the best crop protection, all of those types of things. So that's really the forward-looking piece, which most of that work on the soybean side is done through K-State Research and Extension. So that's one big piece of it. But then obviously on the association side, the policy work, like Josh touched on, making sure farmers maintain those tools in their toolbox, no matter what it is, and no matter what you plant or what your brand is or what your chemistry is, ensuring farmers have access is one of our highest priorities in DC as a policy organization.
From a wheat standpoint, I mean, this year was a perfect storm for Wheat Streak Mosaic. Just Kansas weather harbored it perfectly this year, and it was kind of devastating to this year's wheat crop. Through you guys are talking about extension and the wheat breeding program at Kansas State, we've coming out with varieties that are Wheat Streak Mosaic resistant and Trim V resistant, and trying to educate producers to be mindful to use those hybrids, not hybrids, but varieties in the right location. Another thing, you need to look at the Kansas extension research about controlling volunteer wheat to stop the wheat curl mite from being able to spread and get that infestation going in the new seeded crop in the fall. So need to kind of look at that. But we also just started a campaign called Fight the Mite and have a AI generated creature to help remind people. But it's just kind of educating producers and being mindful of where you're going to be planting wheat in the fall and knowing your territory. But the most important thing is controlling that volunteer wheat so that you don't harbor the pest and that will bring that disease the next year.
All right, so let's think about markets, trade. A lot of hot topics right now for all of us here upstairs. So, Chris, you and I had a conversation the other day. You were talking about some concerns that we're seeing right now here on the Kansas side with storage and what's kind of in the bins. Let's talk a little bit about what you guys are looking at from trade, the disruptions that we've had. What's the opportunities that we have for Kansas commodities? Kansas is an export state, widely exporting a lot of products. So let's talk a little bit more about that. What are the opportunities? What are some things that we need to be kind of considering? But Sean, from your experience as a grower, what are the things that you would like to see more of as well?
More of as markets.
More of markets, more policy, more...
Yeah, any policy that we can get to broaden our markets in Kansas with corn and soybeans, any of that's going to help us tremendously. Southeast Kansas, our corn flows south to the chicken, the poultry industry, and pet food, and so we've got a pretty decent market down there. I understand West is, struggling a little more with different things, but and then we've got two crush plants close by that are tremendously helping the soybeans. So really, I can't complain a whole lot in Southeast Kansas. We're doing pretty good, but I understand other places in Kansas are struggling with finding those markets.
Chris, you want to touch a little bit on that grain storage and some opportunities you see?
So opportunities, the cure for low prices is low prices. I was going through looking today, and wheat being exported out of the United States is at a 10-year high right now. The last 2 months has been really good. We've opened up some extra markets, but once again, a bulk of Kansas's wheat crop, is railed out to Mexico or to the Gulf to be put out. There is quite a backlog of grain in the elevators, and with the large fall crop coming in, storage will be an issue. I think probably more in the western part of the state, we haven't kept up with on-farm storage just due to the nature of being in an arid region. And as time goes on to access some of those markets, we need probably some better programs to get on-farm storage to capitalize on those moving forward.
You guys would know more about this than I would, but are we doing anything extra for open up markets in India, or are we getting any headway on that?
Great. I didn't even pay you to tee me up on that, but I could speak in general, and then we want to let Caleb talk on the trade issue, because I know the resources soybeans is investing, and reopening markets through that. But, from a pure corn standpoint with exports, and probably some of this has a lot to do with what Chris says on the low prices there, but we're easily on track this market year. We're going to set records in both whole corn and in ethanol exports, another important market for corn and grain sorghum through there. So, lots of rhetoric, a lot of stuff that makes us feel uneasy these days in the trade world and stuff holding us back. What we've seen so far is, a lot of those trade deals and other partners have kind of held corn and ethanol harmless and pieces there. But there is that ripple effect through that, through there. When I look at, especially going out west, looking at those, I just can't even imagine those basis numbers I see on grain sorghum and milo out there. And a lot of that just due to the China market being shut off. That is going to have direct impacts on all of our commodities through there, because with that cheaper grain sorghum is going to be utilized, in the ethanol plants. Feedlots are going to utilize more of it, and it's just this whole cycle thing through there. All of the commissions have done significant investment in these foreign markets, corn and grain sorghum through the U.S. Grains Council and Kansas Corn. We've invested, it's north almost $1.5 million just from Kansas side in opening up an office in India, because that really is that next frontier pathway. India is already, it's typically a top 4 customer for ethanol, distillers grains through that. They do have some issues with GMOs, so I think in the short term, really good opportunity for grain sorghum being a non-GM crop, and then of course working towards through that for whole corn, whole soybean imports into India as well. And so those are just areas there. So that kind of the trade or the headlines that always seems to capture, it's that China, Canada, Mexico. But, our organization's been working all over the world. And, Caleb.
Yeah, and those are the big players for soybeans too. So nationally, about half the soybean crop gets exported to international markets. Pre-2018 trade and tariffs, 60 to 70% of that was China, or maybe even higher. So actually one of the good things that came out of the 2018 trade and tariffs, if there were a few, was market diversification. So the U.S. Soybean Export Council worked really hard to find other and develop other markets. So U.S. soybeans are going to a lot more places around the world, and India is one of those. And so the unique piece is whole soybean exports are fairly stable right now, but we've added maybe 20% crush market in the U.S. So that crush expansion has been huge, and especially down in your part of the world, that Bartlett plant down at Cherryville has been awesome. But what that means is then we have to not only find new markets for soybeans, we need to find new markets that are willing to take soybean meal. And India is one of those. Some of the GM issue, we actually got a few shipments of soybean meal into India last year. So that kind of is, something that we can point to as we're trying to work through those trade deals, because like Josh said, they're a huge market, huge potential there for agricultural products. So just one of the examples of kind of a small piece, but we can do some targeted work there in India and hopefully have some success with that.
Now, do you guys ever do trade missions hosting back here in Kansas? Is that something that growers can get a part of here with you guys?
Yeah, that absolutely through that. We will, in a typical year, host at least 2 to 3 trade teams here, and then have done reverse trade missions where we've went overseas to the markets there. But that is a really good opportunity. We'll just kind of, depending on what part of the state that we want to focus on, more of a livestock, biofuel, or it's always pretty cool. I love it. Here this October, we'll be hosting trade teams from Southeast Asia, and I always like to time those during harvest and get these foreign buyers into these combines, because we all think they're pretty cool. They look like they're from another planet. If you're coming from some of these, especially smaller countries that doesn't have as much advanced agriculture, getting them in a combine, that's a lot of fun.
And that's a unique thing that we have over our competitors in South America is, I've been at some of these dinners or sitting down or in another country on a trade mission, and you're face to face with a buyer, and they say, "I've never had a soybean farmer from Brazil sit down or come to my office or come to my home or come to my business," but they have U.S. soybean farmers and they have U.S. farmers. So that's a unique piece that we're able to do through our checkoff organizations and really make those connections between farmer and buyer in those countries. That's a real advantage for us, for sure.
That really kind of highlights the importance of the MAP and FMD funds that comes out. But it would have been 2 years ago, there was a trade team from COFCO here that I got to meet with in Manhattan. And we have the Wheat Innovation Center there. A lot of trade teams come through an IGP across the parking lot. But on the Hard Red Winter Wheat Tour that came through the farm this year, there was a trade team from a buyer from Mexico that came across the farm, and another one from South America. And rather than looking at the crops, they were interested in seeing the production cycle, and got them up in the combine and in the sprayer and different things, and let them get out and touch and play on the farm. And that means a lot to them to actually get to see the hands-on what a farmer does to care for the crop. And that's a 3-day tour, and I guess that was really impactful. They talked about it quite a bit. So
what I'm hearing is seeing is believing. Okay, so let's touch on another fun topic, soil health. There's been a lot of talk about soil health here lately, looking at production practices. We do a lot here at Beck's with our practical farm research and such. So, Josh, we'll kick it to you. Talk a little bit about what you guys are doing as an organization to help growers with soil health, to educate policymakers and things about what we are doing out in the field to help with soil health today.
And I think just the diversity of Kansas really helps bring that message home to policymakers, because if I had to put all of this into one sentence, it would be just encouraging them that there's no one-size-fits-all solution for soil health. There's no magic bullet out there. Just because of our climate, I'd put Kansas right up there at the top for adoption of some of the original soil conservation, water management practices. No-till, reduced tillage. We're kind of sitting in the heartbeat of it right here where we are in central Kansas, just from that. So we've been there. But as we go across the state with the diversity, what's going to work on Chris's farm and a no-till type system where, water is usually the limiting factor. So when I see these proposed policies, it's like, we're just going to all plant cover crops. Well, you know what? We've got a great cover crop we've been growing for centuries here in the state. It's called wheat. And I know it's more than a cover crop, but that works there. But, compared to what Sean faces in southeast Kansas, where you got to get those ground temperatures up somehow, and your windows are so tight on that. And so it is really letting the farmers be in the driver's seat to choose which practices make the most sense, for their operation and that. So that's really that big piece. And so with that being said, we kind of have to take that all of the above approach, knowing that those cover crops and those most advanced biologics might make really good sense for part of the state, but you get to other areas of the state, it's more focused on how do we preserve what little moisture there is most years.
Yeah, Josh is absolutely right with that, because I can't call my buddy in Indiana and have him tell me how to, he plants a cover crop. I've been experimenting with cover crops for the last 10 years probably. And I still don't have the answers. I'm closer, but I think experimentation on your own, just small plots and trying different things with that is going to help out tremendously and for you. And really, even the county over may not be the same situation. But what works for your farm and your timing is the main thing.
If you had a magic wand, Chris, and you could have whatever you wanted to be able to do what you wanted on your farm, what's that one program to help you out with your soil health programs?
Well, I'm in NRCS programs with cover crops. I've also in a program, I've got a see and spray machine, which was reducing my chemical usage. I'm also using variable rate for reducing fertilizer. A neat thing, this is what I'd like to see over my whole farm. We're experimenting with robots going down the rows and eating these weeds off. And so that's absolutely no chemical involvement in it. There's some neat things coming down. I think keep your eyes open and keep your mind open on some of these things. It may not work, but you don't know until you try it.
Chris, anything for you guys?
So Josh had touched on it. I mean, the varying climate in Kansas from the west to the east, I mean, you're going to get, 12 to 14 inches of rainfall in the western part of the state to almost 60 in the eastern. And then it's the same way all the way to the east coast there, climate-wise. So Kansas has a very diverse, harsh climate. Some of the nice things that wheat brings in across all that, it grows well in arid regions, and you get that crop diversity, helps control weeds in your corn better, preserves moisture. But you get to the eastern part of the state where you can double crop soybeans in behind wheat. You know, it works well everywhere. And one thing wheat's working on is wheat beyond the value of the grain. Right now, it's a program we're coming out with because the environmental impacts, the residue left behind is really aids in production of row crops, be it corn or soy or whatever else, and really helps break up the pest cycles that are problematic in corn and soy as well. So that's one thing we've been kind of working on, and also in the limited irrigation areas in far western part of the state, you know, to put some wheat out there where it's an arid climate crop, you're able to, you know, do a half circle and on full irrigation, then leave the wheat, you know, there to kind of preserve the soil and make it better for the next cropping cycle.
Well, you say, you know, you get maybe 12 inches of rain. You know, we might get 42 inches of rain, but it may only happen in like 3 months. So that's where good soil health comes into effect on us, trying to keep that moisture locked in the ground.
And our biggest challenge is to take all this great work that these guys are already doing out in the field, boil it down into a 30-second soundbite that somebody in Congress may or may not have any background whatsoever in agriculture, and explain how great they're already doing and what the opportunities are that are out there for these guys. And so that's our biggest challenge, is getting that message out to DC and sharing that, hey, you know, not only is farming not the same in eastern Kansas as it is in western Kansas, it's for sure not the same as western Kansas is as central Indiana. And so if you're sitting in DC and farming is all the same to you and it all is just kind of fits in this neat box, well, it obviously doesn't. But we really want to highlight the great work that these guys are already doing out in the fields all across the state.
So from the Jetson era with autonomous robots and see and spray and things to seeing is believing, let's think about our call to action today. Call to action for our growers, call to action for our policymakers. What's that one or two call to actions that you would really like for growers, policymakers to know or to do to help us out? Talk about our messaging, to educate, seeing is believing, whatever it may be.
I'd like them to know the importance of conservation programs. I know there's a lot of different things going on with RFK Jr., and sometimes that seems scary. But regulation is going to be coming down the pipeline. We all know that. If we have these programs, though, to help us get into this next generation of farming, I think that would be my number one message, to keep these programs for us, to keep building upon what we're already trying to do.
Yeah, and from what I encourage the farmers is just to just step one, just stay informed, which now is easier than ever, just with every bit of media that throws at you, both good and bad. But use the good part of that and stay informed in that. Get involved with with your commodity commissions and then their partner growers associations through there, just so you're kind of hearing that level, and then you're gonna be best well suited. And really, my ask from there is get involved. I know it does. It's tough to break away from the farm, but we're coming here into August, so we're gonna have our policymakers running all around the state doing meetings. When you see that notice on Facebook that your elected official is going to be somewhere near, show up and show that importance, because it's important even in Kansas for our own people to hear that message that we're not out here trying to kill people, right? And sometimes that message is just is there. What we're just blessed in America with a very abundant, a very safe, and a very affordable food supply through there, and we can't take that for granted, because we've seen how that's really backfired in other parts of the world. And so, additional regulations are just going to add additional costs, and sometimes I think will harm the very people that some of these policymakers are trying to help. Everyone wants to help that small guy, that small farmer. Well, who's, the additional regulations and costs and making it harder to operate, what is that going to lead to? It's going to lead to fewer family farms out there today.
Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, because I'm going to pretty well echo Josh, and that call to action for farmers is get engaged, get involved. To me, the days of putting your head down, doing the work, running your business, unfortunately, those are limited. I don't think, as small as our network and as our group, as strong as our network is, it's smaller. It's smaller every day. There are fewer farmers every day. That's just what the data says. That's the facts of life. There's fewer of us doing it every day. So you're going to have to work harder and be more vocal and be more engaged. And from the association side, the cool thing is you have a built-in network. So you don't have to recreate the wheel. You don't have to figure out, okay, I need to go to DC once this year. How am I I'm just gonna fly out there on my own and go set up some hill meetings and do that. No, you don't have to worry about that. You've got a support system out there. You've got a network to do that. Just plug in where it fits, where it makes sense. You may be super interested in policy work, and you may love the work that Kansas Corn is doing. So get involved in their board, go on their policy stuff. You might love what the wheat's doing on the checkoff side and the research, and that might be your niche. Go for that too. You don't have to do it all. Just find what works for you, and get involved, get engaged. Because if you don't make your voice heard, somebody else is going to fill that void. So get out there, and encourage you to reach out and be engaged.
I'm going to echo what these guys said, but hopefully make it a little bit better. No disrespect, guys.
I hope so.
It's easy to get locked in your own cab on your own farm and put your head down and go to work. Very much so. And I would say get involved in your commodity organizations. You pay the checkoff dollars. I mean, your voice is as loud as anyone else's, but I think as farmers, we take for granted, like what you guys do on a state level, wheat on a state level, national level. These guys are working hard to represent us every day, and they can only do their job as good as what they know from the producers' voices. Being involved in wheat, I know producers from all around the nation. We have a really good relationship with each other, but it gives you perspective as to what's going on in other people's farms, other issues. And without being involved, I would have never done that. I would have been just in the cab with my head down going to work. And I do think that we take for granted the lobbying people that have our back, because, we don't speak DC talk, we speak farmer talk. You guys are our translators, and what you do is very valued and appreciated, and thank all of the CEOs and staff that have our back, because you represent us well.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. We'll keep at it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. We will definitely make sure we stay involved. Seeing is believing, and watch out for the Jetsons next time. Alrighty. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.